this stuff, and I didn't really know how to explain it very well. So as I was like looking up all the stuff about communion, I was just mainly looking for what is communion, like why are we doing this? And so we do it every week, and it kind of has become like a ritual here at Allendale. And I looked up the roots of the word because I figured like that is how you find out what a word means, is you look up the roots. And I took Latin for a couple years, so I know that the Latin root of communion is communis, which actually comes from like words like common, community, and communicate. And so all those words are like together in that they mean that participation by everyone. And then I also had to look up the Greek root because I don't know anything about Greek. And it means just sharing, the Greek translation for the word communion. And so both like the translation and the root of the word, they correlate to a sense of togetherness, that we're all here today and that we feel strongly, so we come to church and we're like really tight together because we're such a close church, and it's just a really great feeling to come here. And so the most complete biblical account of communion comes from Paul in Corinthians, and he actually criticizes the Corinthians because the way that they go about communion, which is kind of like a private and individual way, and he says, like, for when the time comes to eat, each of you goes ahead with your supper and goes hungry, and another becomes drunk. And that kind of reminds me of the way that, because communion is like we're taking food, and it's like a way that, it's like when we're doing our supper with our family, and how sometimes we get distracted by material things, like, for me, I'll be reading while we're eating, or some other people will get distracted by electronics, like, oh, I gotta check my Facebook. And we kind of just lose sight of like what's around us in our family. And I think that with communion today, that we shouldn't lose like sight of what's around us when we're taking communion. Like, it is about God and it's about remembrance of Him, but we should also look around to our church and our community, hence communion. And so this concept of community when we take communion isn't really like something that we should ignore. It's something that we should acknowledge. And a great example of this, when I think of like, is when Jesus, he had those loaves of bread and then the fish, and he went out and he fed the 5,000, and he didn't ask like, oh, are you a follower of God? Before he fed the people, he just did it. He just gave. And I think that with communion, we shouldn't like separate ourselves from each other, like, because God, he just goes out and he goes to the lepers, and Jesus is going out to all the other people, the outcasts. Like, I've been to churches where I don't feel a part of it, and I feel kind of judged because of some of the things that they do. And I feel like in our church we should be like Jesus. That's what Christianity is about, and we should accept each other and love each other when we're taking communion. And all right, let's pray. So, Lord, please help all of us that to be like you, especially when we're taking communion, to reach out towards our family and towards the people around us and just love each other, Lord. And thank you for everything that you've done for us. You're amazing.
Amen.